Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jason Weller with the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. Hopefully, you are here this afternoon to hear from the folks at Ozone House about advocating like a champion. That's the unofficial title of today's webinar, by the way, for those of you that didn't know. So, a couple of housekeeping things. For those of you who either haven't done a webinar before or have done, or it's been a while. Top right-hand side of your screen is going to be your best friend. That's where all the controls are. We have everybody on mute for the presentation because we're expecting an audience, probably about 30-ish people today. So if you want to ask a question or if you're having any issues with the audio or video, unfortunately, with the audio or video connections, the best thing to do is log out, log back in. That'll generally fix whatever issues are going on. If you have a question for the presenter or some other tech-related questions, feel free to use the questions bar on the right-hand side of the screen. Just click on the questions, the little icon next to questions, the drop box will pop up, type in your question, hit send, and you are good to go. Depending on the question, we may take it immediately, or we may actually hold it till the end. Just so if you don't hear me say something about, oh, we've got a question, just know that we might be holding it until the end on purpose. And lastly, I want to point out that we've got two handouts. When we do webinars, folks are always interested in getting the presentation. So we have a copy of the presentation today, as well as some handouts that the coalition has put together. Completely unrelated to the work that Ozone's doing, but it's the advocacy packet that we've been using this year, and we actually need to update because we've had some wins with the recent state budget that was passed. So it gives you an idea of the advocacy-related work that the coalition's doing. So I think that's it for the housekeeping stuff. And at this point, I will turn things over to Dawn Espy, who's the Education Program Manager at Ozone House. Dawn, the floor is yours.
Hi, how are you doing? So we are from Ozone House. We're a group called Speak Out. And I am the staff facilitator of the group. And today we are going to talk to you about the way that we engage policymakers, participate in the community, and just kind of talk about the different strategies we use. And I have two folks here with me who are members of Speak Out, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Robin Newell. I'm a part of Speak Out.
Hi, everyone. I'm DJ, and I'm a part of Speak Out.
And how long have you two been doing this work?
I've been doing this for about 4 years now.
Okay.
I've been doing this for about a year now.
Right, and so I think actually Jason has a few poll questions for the audience, just so we've shared, and I've been doing this for 4 years now as well, so I think what we want to hear is kind of where other folks are at in the room, or in the so to speak room. If you want to share, Jason, the polls that we put out, it might be give us a good picture of who we're talking to and the audience we have.
Yep, thanks, Dawn. And we're launching the first poll, which is just asking if folks on the call today are familiar with Ozone House. I suspect, given the presentation at the summit 2 weeks ago, that a lot more folks know about Ozone House now than prior to that. But it is a big state, and there's a lot of service providers, so we'll see how things come out here. Wow, so about 2/3 of folks on the call have already responded. I think I'll give everybody, we've got a bunch of poll questions today, so I think I'll cut everything a little short. So maybe give folks another 5 seconds to respond to this one, and we'll move on to the next poll question. Okay, there we go. So 42% of the folks on the call are familiar with Ozone House and your programs, and 58% aren't. So maybe before you get started, talk a little bit about the work that you're doing. Now let's see. Let's move on to the next question. So, as the presenters were just asking, or were just sharing with us the amount of time that they've been doing this work, let's find out from the folks who are on the call today how long you've been doing this work. And again, being mindful, we've got a few more poll questions to ask. So normally I let things go a little long, but I think today we'll probably try to keep things moving forward. Oh, so Jessica, who just typed in the response to the question, you can actually just respond to the poll that's on your screen. So let's see. Oh wow, we've got about 80% of the folks have responded. So let's take a quick look at this. Oh wow, this is pretty even. So a third of you for less than a year, a third of you 2 to 4 years, and then a third of you, a little less than a third of you for 5+ year, between 5 to 7 and 8+ years is about a third of you, and then the remainder, although I'm not quite sure how we got 5% since the time of dinosaurs. So it's good to see a couple of folks brought their sense of humor with them today. You never know with these lunchtime webinars how things, what kind of mood folks are in. So another question we have is to get a sense with the spread geographically of where folks are at, because we know historically we tend to get folks from literally all over the state and sometimes even out of the state, which I realize I did not accommodate on this poll question. So if you're from outside of Michigan, I apologize. I did not mean to offend you. But yeah, this will give the presenters a sense of and myself, a sense of who's on the call. And then this is the last of the demographic questions, and then we've got some more specific advocacy related questions. So I hope folks are ready for those. All right. All right, and let's see. I think we're close to a minute. Yeah, folks are still voting. No offense to those of you who haven't voted yet, but I think we'll go ahead and close things off because we still have 2 more polls to go. So, wow, this is a bit of a spread. So roughly 25% from Eastern Michigan, 40% from Central, a little less than 20% Western, and a little more than 10 from Northern, and 10% from the UP. So kind of what I anticipated, not that surprised, but good to have the information. All right, so as I mentioned, now we're moving into very advocacy related questions. And this has to do with when was the last time you met with an elected official? And this could be any level. So not thinking like member of Congress or city council member or mayor, it could be anything. And give folks about, I think on average, we've been getting about 40-45 seconds. So give folks about another 15 or 20 seconds to respond, because a lot of folks are weighing in on this one. All right. Well, I think we've got the highest response rate so far to all the questions. So, wow, 15% of you are on point with a meeting with an elected official in the last week. That is impressive, and kudos to you. Tip of the hat, all of that. 30% of you within the last 6 months. 5% the last year, and I think this is where we see a divide. So basically, half of you have met with an elected official at some level within the last year, and 50% of you, it's been at least a year, with 30% having never met with somebody. So That's very good. You are in the right place. You will get a lot of good information today. And last but not least, to get a sense of who you've been meeting with, and this is a question where you can have more than one answer. So you can click all of the boxes, you can click some of the boxes, whatever it is. And I will say that I've added reps from state and federal agencies because in the last probably year and a half, there have been a lot more agencies reaching out to us about advocating with some of the state partners like Mr. DHHS and on issues like their budget or policy changes than I think we've ever had. So wanted to make sure we capture that. And because that advocacy work is just as important as working with elected officials. So with that being said, I think we've gotten the response rate there that we're going to get. So share this, and this is actually the last of the poll question. So basically 75% are working with or have met with local elected officials. About half of you have met with your state rep or senator. A quarter of you have met with your member of Congress. Interestingly, about 40% of folks have met with reps from their state or federal agencies, and then 5% other. So there we go. That's the last of the poll questions. So Dawn, TJ, and Robin, I think you got pretty good sense. I mean, you got a solid mix of folks on the call today in terms of the range of experience and where they are geographically and all that. So with that being done, I'll turn the floor back to you.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, sounds like we do have a pretty good mix. I think I'm wondering if those folks who were that 15% have been meeting in the last week should get on the mic as well. But it's good to know that we have a good mix in here, and there's some folks who've never engaged with folks before, so we're excited to kind of have this conversation. And yeah, so before we get kind of going with what we as a group Speak Out do, I guess I'll give a little background on what Ozone House is. Ozone House, we are located in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti in Michigan, so in that southeastern corner of the state, and we in Washtenaw County. And we are a nonprofit that's been around for about 50 years that we do work with runaway and homeless youth as well as young people who are in crisis and experiencing housing instability or who are at risk. So we provide counseling services, we provide a drop-in center for young people just to have a safe space to be in. Our goal is around providing safe and supportive environments for young folks when they need it. That's pretty much what we do, and we've been doing that for, like I said, for about 50 years now. We celebrate our anniversary this year. So this is some work that we have been very dedicated to for an extended period of time, and we continue to provide opportunities for young people to not only get support, but then also have a space to share their voice. And so that's why we have a group called Speak Out, and I'm going to let DJ kind of follow up on what Speak Out is.
Speak Out is a group of young people advocating and working with Ozone House to advocate for policy changes on a local, state, and federal level, and emphasizing policies affecting like at-risk youth and youth experiencing homelessness.
We also engage in policymakers to address youth homelessness and create change. Speak Out has engaged with policymakers in various levels of government and in a variety of ways.
And yeah, so Jason, if you want to, I think Jason's controlling our slides, so I think we can move up. So we were just saying what Speak Out is, and then also moving on to the next one where we're going to talk about just kind of what it means when we talk about engaging policymakers. Robin, you can continue.
When it comes to engaging policymakers, we also, for an example, do face-to-face contact. We perform pieces and narratives. We include phone calls and emails, and also community forums and events. We do these things all on the local, state, and federal level. And yeah.
And so we'll just go through this presentation, the webinar. We're going to talk about how we engage in those activities at those local, federal, and state levels. And so that's how kind of we will have it broken down as we're walking through. All right, and so for this on the local level, do you want to move the slide?
Okay. At the local level, we've worked with the mayor's office, city council, the county commissioners, county members, and the board of education. And for example, we've held youth-led summits, planned and facilitated the entire event, asked the mayor to endorse it, and send invitations, testimonies.
Yeah, and so that that's an example of the flyer we sent out with that event, that Voice of the Table event that DJ was talking about. It just gave opportunity for young people to be heard and really get active with get in themselves involved with the political process. And then we've also, as DJ was talking, gone to these city council meetings.
And we've had testimonies at multiple Ann Arbor City Council meetings, i.e., lands owned by the city should be designated for affordable housing versus being sold to private developers.
Also, within the local level, we create community partnerships.
Like the next slide, thanks.
We connect with agencies like Staying Power Collaboration. Multiple collaboration shows unified voice and need in the community, addressing housing and crisis gentrification, like youth-led and inviting the entire community to the table. Also including Nutrizone, Ypsilanti District Library, Growing Hope, and we also host events with Ypsilanti High School. When it comes to a local academic institution, EMU, we get involved with social work and alumni event, advocacy, and activism day. Also, U of M social work classes, building power conference. Through engaging current students, we are helping influence the future workforce and demonstrating how students can get involved now by providing information on how to engage legislators and elected officials. When it comes to community events, telling tales events in the community, anytime there is an event in the community, we will provide a platform to share our story. We participate. For an example, I shared a story a while back about being on the city bus and how that pretty much changed my life as a youth, and how the AATA system actually made an impact for me as a youth because of the fact that I thought I had no hope, and they gave me hope, not just with transportation, but learning about the bus drivers as well.
Yeah, so that piece of I think that community event in particular was interesting because the goal, it was sponsored by a local newspaper, and it was an opportunity just to tell stories about your experience living in the town. And so again, it was an opportunity, it wasn't necessarily that it was about homelessness, the event, but we participated and we shared, and Robin shared her story. We also, another Speak Out member shared their story as well, because we recognize that it's important that our stories get integrated into the stories of what the city is. They're not just single issue experiences. And when people want to know about the city you live in, the experience of young people who are at risk is a part of that story. And so that's why we really try, when there are community events, when there are opportunities to have almost open mic nights even, to show up to them and participate. And then at the state level.
So Dawn, actually, could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
With the community forum, the candidate forum that you referenced on the previous slide, did your organization bring that about? Did you start that organizing process, or was that more of a partnership with folks in the community?
So that was actually a partnership with the mayor's office and the community. Our previous mayor actually developed a youth council, and so when it was time to go into the next election season, we worked with our organization as well as we have a partner organization called Corner Health, and they also have a youth council, and that group works a lot with political activism as well. And so it was a collaboration between the different kind of youth councils, saying we need to make sure that young people are getting out to vote, and a way to do that was to give them an opportunity to actually meet the candidates. So it was both county commissioners and then also the state representatives were a part of those events.
Gotcha. Thank you. So you said you want to move to next slide?
Yeah, so we're going to move on to what we've done at the state level.
At the state level, we've participated in Dome Day every year. And we've advocated for runaway youth and homeless providers coverage on the Capitol for a day of education and advocacy with state legislators. We've also invited State Representative Rodney Peterson to tour the drop-in center and meet with the participants. We sent letters in partnership with Washtenaw County Continuum of Care to Governor Whitmore to request long-term solution by working alongside the state senators and representatives to amend action number.
So the act doesn't necessarily matter, but our goal around that is to, we're working with our local continuum of care, sending information to the governor to address the fact that our youth emergency shelter, which is what Ozone House is currently, we'd like to have it switched in the legislation to be a child caring institution that allows for minors to consent to shelter services. So it's that step of working with the folks locally to talk with our state folks, like our governor.
And we've also held conferences. We went to conferences such as the MISHDA Summit on ending homelessness, the Michigan Network for Youth and Family, and we've participated in where we participated with the Michigan Homeless Policy Council regional meetings.
When we went to the Building Michigan Communities Conference that was in Lansing, we made sure to that conference was important. We presented and we attended, But then we also used it as an opportunity to take a chance to talk with elected officials. There was, during the conference, a lunch on the Hill, and we quickly tried to connect with our local representatives there, and actually ended up meeting with Jeff Irwin, who is our state representative, while we were there for a conference. So never missing an opportunity to have an opportunity to talk to somebody. It's never the wrong time to check in with your legislators. What we say is that we try, when we talked about meeting with Ronnie Peterson, we basically try to meet with him every few months here, whether it's in our space or out in the community. Maintain that connection. As we said on the slide, even when there's not an ask, we're still trying to check in and just say hello.
Next one. Okay. When it comes to the federal level, the U.S. Senators and House of Representatives request meetings with staffers from the U.S. Senator Gary Peters' office approach with U.S. Representative Debbie Dingell during one of our Congress in the Community event to educate her about the Homeless Children and Youth Act and ask her for her support. We engaged around the federal legislation like Homeless Children and Youth Act, the McKinney-Vento Act, and Runaway and Homeless Youth Act. We made multiple calls and emails to Congress people about the federal budget for the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act and the Education for Homeless Children and Youth program. We also engage ourselves in housing and urban development, like the point in time count. We want to say, count me in. Ozone House. Ozone hosted an event at our drop-in center in partnership with County OCED Office of Community and Economic Development to help get a better representation of the homelessness experience in our county for the HUD point in time count. We also get excited and encourage Speak Out youth to extend their reach outside of Speak Out. We work on the national level with KT Foundation.
Mm-hmm. And that's a foster care foundation. One of our members, actually, who previously was in foster care, has not only gone and done lobbying work on the Hill, but then also is working with the Casey Foundation and was actually awarded this past year the award for young people who were in foster care, a national recognition award for her work advocating on behalf of youth in foster care. It's that idea of extending your reach outside of what's not necessarily what's happening right in front of you, but also, like I said, we work as a collaboration and a group, but we also celebrate and encourage folks who are working with us to further their connections with different spaces. And we have 2 or 3 folks who have gone out to do conferences and events outside of our space. And even if it's not our whole group going, we get excited and try to facilitate what we can for folks to continue to spread more information around the causes that we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
The lessons we've learned are relationship building, putting a face to the story, putting a face plus to the story of the numbers, and follow up.
Yep, and we'll just kind of talk through what that looks like. Those are some of the primary ways that we believe that what kind of our work has shown us. So moving forward, the slide.
Relationship building is key. Make your introduction when you have a chance to meet key players in policy making. Make yourself and your cause known. Relationship building is key. It can start with a staffer. Um, don't be discouraged if you cannot get face-to-face time with the policymaker. You can leverage your relationship with a policymaker to engage other policymakers. For example, when the state representative Zemke called local superintendents about ozone administrating surveys to students about their housing situation. That was a big change. Relationships should be uh, reciprocal. Okay, thank you. Relationships should be reciprocal. Figure out how you or your group can support a policymaker. For example, when Representative Adam Zemke hosted a community forum on the school to prison pipeline, he reached out to speak out to identify plainless panelists and invite us to attend, which was a big step in Speak Out reputation. And I'm actually really proud that we did that. All right, okay. Moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Putting a face and the story to numbers is important. Statistics are important, but decision makers need to hear those directly affected too. Speak Up developed some performance pieces that both incorporate statistics but also share the personal experiences of the members. Voices of Ozone performance piece is a theatrical performance about youth homelessness, and it's performed by youth and young adults who are we are directly affected by or have experienced in some way homelessness and things of that nature, and just feeling alone, really.
I know sometimes we joke that, and if any of you were at the conference, that the folks who are performing sometimes feel as if they're yelling at the audience. But it's kind of, I often will remind them that they might feel like they're yelling or scolding the audience, but they're actually sharing a story that needs to be told. So that piece of not knowing what it looks like to feel invisible. So many of you may have heard some of you may have heard us perform in the past. Like I said, we do perform these at conferences, but a big part of that is giving voice to these invisible stories. DJ and Robin are both integral parts of those performances, and sometimes they're performing entire 45 minutes to an hour performance. Other times we're performing pieces from it that really address specific issues. And then our goal is not just to provide some sort of entertainment and its education, but also give an opportunity after to have a dialogue session where we can kind of share a little bit. We can ask people to really think about what messages showed up in those stories, and then also give folks an opportunity to talk with our young people about their own experiences.
Because we're not just numbers, we're actual stories. We want to put an actual face on the number that they put on the graph. We're not invisible. We're actually here. Mm-hmm. Next slide, please. Thank you. Follow-up. To follow up, be ready. It is essential to stay in contact. Have a specific request or call to action. Check website for updates on voting and priorities. Follow up with staffers with phone calls or emails. Communicate ongoing and make sure you stay on the radar make sure you stay visible and not invisible.
What we say is sometimes a squeaky wheel does get the grease. When we hold folks accountable, we do our research and then we ask them to do theirs. So we're continually checking in. Contact your representatives. There are websites that allow for that directly, and sometimes we're sending cold emails to people, and other times it's through the connections we've already made. But having that follow-up and maintaining connection is so important. And for our final lesson.
The final lesson is show up. Just no matter what, show up. We try to show up in any and all spaces, not just when homelessness is in the featured topic, because these issues are dynamic and intersectional and should be heard in multiple spaces.
So that's kind of what we have learned in our work. If you have any questions, hopefully we've had some questions come through. That's kind of a summary of the work we've done and how we've done it, and hopefully it generates some thoughts for you and your agency or the work you're in.
So, wondering if the three of you can talk a little bit about some of the successes you've had. As you were talking about the work that's happened at the local level, it sounds like, in terms of being able to engage with the school system, getting surveys out, I mean, that's actually a pretty big success. Wondering if you could talk about some of the other successes that you've had with the work that you've done.
Yeah, so I think the fact is that particularly, and I think we are particularly proud of the Voices of Ozone theatrical piece. Like we said, that's a big part of that, is having those stories connected to the numbers. And what we've seen with that is that we've gone, probably in the past year, increased the number of conferences that we've been presenting at and attending at least 200%. When we're sharing those stories and being vulnerable in those ways, it's showing up as being impactful, and knowing that it's not just saying that there are, X number of people who are experiencing homelessness in our county, or we're saying there's 1,200 students who are homeless. We have been asked to show up to other spaces. And I think as long as we're being truthful and sharing our truth and being honest about the experiences, that's feeling like a success, because more audiences are wanting to hear that. So we started that at more of a small level here in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. We hosted an event that was our Voices of Ozone performance, and then it's expanded from there, where it's now in audiences. I think when we went to our first conference, we were a little nervous. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We got a small session, and then after that, it was like, can we come and be a keynote? Can we come and do the lunchtime performance? Because it was something that folks have recognized that all audiences need to hear. They need to hear the voices of youth. So, yeah. And then, Robin, you were talking about just sharing your poetry?
Yeah, we had an event a while back, and we were in Depot-town. I forgot what the name of the place we were attending, but we pretty much spread our poetry. We pretty much told our story. We were basically being recognized as Speak Out, and not just within the state level, but also just in our town itself. When Washtenaw County, we are known more, and I believe that for me personally, that's an accomplishment, because turning ourselves from being invisible and knowing that we are now visible is a major change, a major step for us as youth. And I am proud to be a part of a group where we can actually make a change and show other youth that you don't have to be invisible forever. You can make a change just by being who you are and making a step up by including yourself with Ozone House and let you know all the positivity that you can do as a youth.
And I would say, I mentioned it earlier, but when we were at the Building Michigan Communities Conference, having an opportunity just to talk to representatives at lunch then led to us going into the chambers and actually having Senator Irwin just say hello to us from the floor. And that really demonstrates that our presence is important and that people are seeing us. Like Robin said, people are hearing and seeing us. So I would say that's a success, knowing that you have our state representatives knowing we're there. And that, I think, means something because, again, it's not just we're making laws or making policies for people who are invisible and are just on a piece of paper. No, we're making policies for people who are in this room. And I think when legislators can see that, that makes a big difference in the way that they're thinking about what the next step is going to look like. We actually have had folks then reach out to us when they are trying to, like, so we said Ronnie Peterson, we've met with him here, and then he's interested in trying to lead a youth summit. So he's now followed up with us asking, like, what that might look like. And while we don't know how long that's going to take, the fact is that he then reached out to us about making that happen. So I think it's showing up when there's opportunities, so that way on the other end of that, people are, again, like we said, the relationships are reciprocal. They're wanting to see how we can support them, we're not just always asking what they can do for us.
We are being invited to invited to different events now, which to me that's very exciting because I would have never thought that I would get to this level to be invited somewhere. Especially working with representatives on the local, state, and federal level. Being invited as a youth, that's a big deal. So I'm very excited about that, and also being excited to introduce other youth to get involved in policy making, and also getting introduced to those who are also policymakers and representatives of the state, local, and federal level to let them know that you can make a change too. Just it's how you do it.
Yeah. And I would say our Staying Power collaboration feels like a success as well. It actually started pretty small. It was one other organization, Neutral Zone, was trying to get this grant for the arts. And they reached out to us about this collaboration. And we moved from being the two of our organizations gathering young people to create this performance piece that they're doing in December to making connections now with Ypsilanti Library, making connections with other organizations, Growing Hope, that does work around sustainability in terms of food sustainability. And then we were able to collaborate with the local high school to use that as a performance space. So it moved from being, this is a small thing where these two organizations want to get young people saying their poetry, to we now have collaborations with 4 or 5 agencies within our county who all are also on board and participating in this and want to hear what young people have to say. So when we have the actual event, we're going to be able to invite people or have a range of people who are publicizing it and hopefully bring in a large audience because of the support we're getting from the community.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, that's all very cool. Flip side question to that. Lessons learned. Is there anything that the groups tried that didn't quite work out the way that you had hoped, either in terms of outcome or just the way the event went? And looking back, are there things that you wish you had done differently? kind of thinking about the 50% of the folks that said that it's been a year plus or they've never done advocacy work. And I think a lot of times folks are hesitant to do this work because they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing or make a mistake or not do it just right. And so is there anything from your experience that you would want to share with them and just say, like, hey, sometimes things don't go the way you intended, and it's okay. You're still here. You're still doing the work.
Well, in this line of work, if you don't start something, if you don't be that trailblazer, you will never know if it does help someone, if it does give that opportunity for someone to come. And like when we did the Count Me In, we opened up the top end to people that needed like just the essentials you just don't think about, like toilet paper and toiletries and get a hot meal. And it wasn't the biggest turnout, but we opened the door up, and the people that came, and they got the help that they needed. And hopefully the ones that didn't come were already at places that were helping them also, which we need to open up more of those, because those are disappearing a lot faster than it really needs to be, because there's a lot of people out in the world that need shelter and housing and accessible amenities and ways to get things that they would need in life.
Yeah, I think that was a good example. I think that event, we had a lot of ambition around what that could look like. I think there's a recognition when it comes to the point in time count that doesn't necessarily do a great job of counting young people particularly. We know young people are resourceful and figure out where they need to be in the middle of the night, and that's oftentimes when the count is taking place. So we worked with our county to try to come up with a different alternative. It happened that the point in time count took place this past year when it was, I think, 0 degrees out. And so getting anybody to go anywhere was a difficult task. But as DJ pointed out, we didn't have a lot of people show up. We were hoping to see big numbers to show, like, look at the numbers of young people experiencing homelessness, but also have that recognition of the people who showed up needed to be here. And despite the fact that it was 0 degrees out and most agencies were closed at the time, Ozone was open and able to support those folks who needed help. So even though we weren't able to help a lot of folks, the ones who were here needed it. And I think that's a thing to remember, that even if the audience is small, even if the turnout's small, that the impact can be pretty great.
Okay. Yes, that's wise words. Every time we talk about that, I always think of the quote from Margaret Mead about, never doubt that a small group of people can change the world, because it's the only thing that ever has. And that's really how things get started. So we've got one more question, and this is Dawn, I think this might be pointed at you, but for folks who are interested in booking some of the youth from Speak Out for a performance, how do they go about doing that? We
do our best to show up in the community and get to different places. If you're interested in having us perform, we can. What I always say is email me. Of course, that's the one thing I forget from the handout, but maybe Jason can add that in. My email address is the best way to connect with us. And from there, our group meets once a week. And so during that meeting, and that's another thing, we meet every week, whether or not there's some sort of big event coming up or not. And sometimes those meetings are a chance to be like, who haven't we talked to lately? Who are our new representatives after an election? But during those meetings, we'll say, here are some upcoming opportunities. That's an agenda item every week, is here are some upcoming opportunities. And there's usually 3 or 4 things on there. And some of them are like, this is a thing we're absolutely doing. And some are like, this is a potential thing. What do you think? Can we make it work? So every Tuesday we meet and we talk about the opportunities that are coming up and who can participate. And so if you'd like to be one of those opportunities, you're welcome to email us and we'll add that to our agenda. But I think having those weekly meetings is actually another piece of what we do. Like I said, when we meet, we often will say, like, well, where are we at? What's going on? Have we talked to the representative? What's next is always our question. And, you know, if we don't have some policymakers we're trying to talk to, we're like, well, what about going into schools and educating and doing some staff training? And
make a meeting with counselors and therapists, what they, what impact have they done for their community? What can we do to make it better for our students in the school,
Yeah, so it's not just saying, like, do we have a conference coming up? It's saying, like, who have we contacted? When was the last time we talked to them? When was the last time we looked at their website? And as many of us know, I feel like there's almost always an election happening or someone preparing for an election. And so sometimes we are scheduling meetings with folks who are about to run for office. In our area, we're going to be getting, I think, a new prosecutor, county prosecutor, and so we're going to start scheduling meetings to meet with the candidates for that. And this is, we're a ways out from that time, but we want to make sure that we've had an opportunity to have FaceTime with these folks and they know what our issues are, so that way that they can consider those when they are putting together their platforms.
Okay. Yeah, you're on point with that. And I like how throughout your presentation, you've been underscoring the importance of forming the relationships, and then maintaining them, because it's one thing to have a one-off meeting with a legislator or a policymaker and then just pat yourself on the back and go, well, we've had that meeting. But it's another thing altogether to actually have that meeting and then ask yourself, what's next? How are we going to maintain this? How can we keep touching base with them? And then, like you said, it doesn't always have to be with a specific ask. A lot of it's almost like dating. You just need to keep in contact and keep the person updated with what's going on. And then it becomes, when something comes up that you do need their help with, you've got that relationship and you can, lean on them and ask for their help. So.
Right. And I think sometimes it's not even like having, like, I think there have been times where it felt a little bit disappointing or sometimes not worth it. For example, if there's like a community, we've had elected officials come to farmers markets or things like that, and we'll show up, and often it might even just be like a hello, a hi, how are you doing, and a photo. But it doesn't always feel like that was impactful, but I think to a certain extent it is. Like, you can't just show up, like you said, when there's an ask or when you're going to be able to sit there and have a bunch of FaceTime. Sometimes it's, I just said hello to this person and I showed up where they were going to be because they were going to be there. Because you stay on their radar. You stay in their head.
Okay. So I think we've exhausted the questions at this point, and we're actually getting close to the 1 o'clock hour, and I've seen a handful of folks have to drop off the call. So I think let's go ahead and wrap up. We're getting a bunch of thank yous, so as soon as I say those closing words. So I think on behalf of the folks who are on the call and myself as the facilitator, and also being one of those people that's putting a proposal out there and asking if you will share your time and expertise with, the folks across Michigan. I'm very grateful that TJ and Robin and yourself, Dawn, were available and willing to do this presentation. So super, super, super thank you to all three of you. And so I said this to the folks on the webinar, but I haven't said it out loud. So I will do a follow-up email, and I'll include Dawn's contact information, and I'll send out a copy of the slides as well for folks who didn't have a chance to download them. And otherwise, I think we're good to go. So thank you once again, everybody, and have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon.
You too.
You too. Take care. Thank you.